Hi, IT 380. This is the first lecture for the fourth week in Sprint 1. It's going to be focused on Chapter 6 of About Face, which is looking at scenarios and requirements. Particularly, we're going to be talking about the problem scenario, the activity scenario, and the problem statement that will be required for your endpoint. This is a shorter read. I'm going to go through it. You can then go through it at your own time. And I'm going to review the endpoint and the endpoint assignment and the endpoint sample. So here we are. Here's lecture 1. I'm going to ask you to read, and then I'm going to ask you to actually create your own problem scenario, activity scenario, and problem statement. The following lectures for this week will deal with the wireframing for the title and intro scenes, and we'll move back into Unity with tutorials on how to finish your actual prototype and then how to build it and upload it to itch.io. And with that, you should have all the directions you need to complete your endpoint deliverables. So, About Face Chapter 6. This follows the persona chapter, and it's about defining and clarifying your ideas and your designs for your software more, and that this step does necessarily follow the persona step. You must define your users before you can define how they will use your app. So again, we took this idea of abstracting groups of your users and their attributes into these archetypes or these personas that look like one person, and it's much easier to focus on this one person, this idealized image of a section of your group. So when you do that, you're going to do that with scenarios in their lifestyle. So usually software is designed to solve problems in users' lives. It makes their life easier. They can achieve tasks quicker. They get more information than they would if they didn't use the technology. Are more creative, or whatever the case is, it enhances their life somehow. So scenarios are these narratives as a design tool. So designers need ways to frame up their mindset around how best to design something in software. They also need tools to have discussions with other team members, especially non-designers, and easy to use artifacts. So artifacts are documents, either text or visuals or animatics or videos, or something to demonstrate an idea in a quicker way than if you had to sit there and give a presentation about it. And so that's what they mean. These are narratives. These are ways to tell stories about your users and what the needs are, so that other people can quickly get on board and understand what's happening to figure out the best software solution. So it kind of goes through when these scenarios were started to adopted in the UX design field. You'll see a lot of this scenario-based design, user-based design, goal-based design, or goal-oriented. And these are all different ways to look at the same set of problems. Software is a very complicated process and beast to tackle when you're making large enterprise-level pieces of software that so many people are going to interact with, and these are just different tools and different mindsets to help try to approach complicated problems. That's why you'll see different names, different ways of design or different ways of thinking about, and it's just different approaches, different perspectives on these larger problems. So we're going to be looking at scenarios that are based on our personas that we've developed. And we have different types of scenarios. The context scenario, where these scenarios are within the context of the persona. So this goal-directed design of persona-based scenarios. That's going to be where our problem scenario and our activity scenario come from. They're within the context of the persona. Some other ones that are of interest, but I don't think we're going to get to, is the Keypad Scenario. So think of this as a user journey through an app. So when you have a piece of software and there's many things to do with it, you can, a useful way might be to follow a journey of a user through a specific task. So sometimes you'll see with banking software, like this user wants to withdraw money at the ATM machine. And it goes through step by step how the person interacts with the ATM machine and what the software is doing to eventually give them a successful end to their task, that they receive their money. And so, yes, you can use the ATM for many other things, but we can't talk about everything all at once. It's too overwhelming. So we talk about these key paths, these main journeys through the software that we think users would do. Think of them as the biggest trails that are blazed through the jungle. Where do you think these biggest trails that these machete wields are going to chop through? And these are the ones that we wish to look at, because documenting the most traveled trails is more beneficial than documenting trails that users will probably not use through your software. Requirements we'll get into lightly. So requirements define what the product will do before you design how the product will do it. So you need to kind of have an idea of what before you have an idea of how. So that's what all these scenarios and requirements, but we're just really going to kind of do the problem statement. We're like stating what this product does before we actually dive in and try to figure out how it does that. And here we go, creating problem and vision statements. So at a high level, the problem statement defines the purpose of the design initiative. And that's why I use the problem statement to terminate the research phase and open up the design phase. It's like the one piece of information, it's like the one artifact that carries over. It's the one tying theme that carries one diamond to the next. So if it's like a diamond necklace, it's the actual string that connects all the diamonds together. And for me, from diamond 1 to diamond 2, from research to design, it's the problem statement, because you're trying to distill down what the whole research phase was into just a paragraph, which is very hard to do. But if you do it correctly, then it's easy to focus what you should be doing in your design phase. And yes, there's other things like the vision statement and what have you, but we're just doing kind of a simplified approach. But feel free to read through it. There's a lot of great information, and for those who really appreciate, want to do a deeper dive into, you actually can read the rest of the chapter. So yeah, there's examples on the context scenario. So this is all really good, and you can the requirements not so much, but how to go through building a context scenario and the examples of it. You should spend some time with that. So, talking about that, we now have, if we return back to the assignment, remember a problem scenario, a description of a situation in the persona's life that gives them the problems that your software will ultimately help alleviate in some way. So in my problem scenario, you remember our persona was Connor, a 13-year-old male who is very active and physical and needs a better way to ground abstract learning material. So in this problem scenario, he just can't sit still in the computer class at the computer, the lab computer, and listen to the instructor and be given very dry programming assignments. And so he kind of cuts class, he gets caught, and he's in trouble failing, and he doesn't really understand the point of computer science for himself and his future. So it had no talk about our software solution in it, but it had a setup situation. It's a problem in the major problem in the life of the persona that we are looking to solve. And you can write it, and it's about 2 paragraphs. So the activity scenario is the description of the situation in the persona's life where they use the software to solve that problem that was stated in the problem scenario. So how do we, through an activity with our software, solve this problem that we presented? Well, we're back to our persona, Connor. And he's back in the classroom, and his hopes are low that he'll ever really have fun in this class, and it's just a waste of time. And the teacher gives a new assignment and says that the assignment is like an interactive simulation, very very similar to like the video games that Connor likes to play. And he as he logs into the website to create his user account so his teacher can track him, he starts to see little screenshots or walkthroughs of the game, or the interactive simulation, and it's in all the abstract material is presented as 3D objects in three-dimensional space. And he gets very excited because these are similar technologies he uses for entertainment purposes. And he then interacts. It's easy to pick up. The interaction design is very similar to his games. He uses this mouse and his keyboard to sort objects in the list representation of how to do a bubble sort, and it allows him to reflect on his life, because these are very similar activities he does when his parents ask him to clean his room, or he's super excited about his sports equipment, so he always keeps it very clean and organized. And he realized that sorting is an activity that we all do in our lives to bring order into the chaos of disorderment. And so this revitalizes his interest in computer science. He actually understands the sorting algorithm and how to apply it. And his initial problem, his initial learning situation, has been solved through the activity scenario presented in the problem scenario. So in this case, the activity scenario was 2 paragraphs long. You can see that it gets a little bit longer to explain than the problem scenario because there's more details to it. And yes, you could argue that the activity scenario, while it is a context scenario, it could belong in either the research or the design phase. And so it's nice to state the what before you get into the how. So it is I'll say on the lighter side, or a little bit more ambiguous than stating how it would actually be implemented and how it would be designed. And that's kind of on purpose because it's more on the design side. It's kind of closing out the research diamond. And so we're kind of stating the what of how this software will fix things in a looser way than actually stating what the design would be. And then the last thing we have to address is the problem statement. So this concludes our research phase. It's a summary of all our efforts. And it's supposed to be that bridging gap of information that somebody who just picks up at the design phase will know enough to get started. And they can always dig deeper into the research as they need to, but it's the ending of research and the beginning of design. And so it's a very clear, succinct statement of the problem, of the persona, from all of our research, where we had a big, wide potential problem space, many problems to pick from. Well, we really defined it down through the persona and the scenarios, and here is the exact problem that we decided to solve through one design diamond into a prototype and possibly more prototype diamonds. Now, this one problem can, once we finish through the prototyping, we do testing. It can cycle through again, research, design, and development as we further refine just this one problem. And you can keep going, and you can find that, we really need to splice the problem down further, or we need to redefine it this way, or we're getting really close, but we just need to work on a little aspect of it. And these diamonds are meant to be very cyclical and continuing this iterative fashion. And also the other thing to note is we ultimately picked one problem that can still continue down this cycle of refinement for a software solution, but there were many problems that we started to surface up. So it's like building a mine and digging for gold, or diamonds, probably a better metaphor. And we picked one that we thought was the best, but there were others that we started to uncover. And you can always go back and pick others. You can close this diamond later on other problems, and then that will cycle off other cycles of design and development on other problems that you partially uncovered when the research diamond was widest. So you can use a metaphor of diamonds or low-hanging fruit, but in either case, that's research begins to uncover some potential interesting problems to solve, and then you pick one and you really define it, and then that starts going down the design phase. So yes, you could say a piece of software, a larger piece, might be solving multiple problems, but these researchers, designers, and developers are super focused down on just a few features or a problem or two to focus on one at a time. And that's enough for this video, and we'll do wireframing next.